Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from the Break It Down show. I'm smiling. I'm telling you, it's for real. Today, we've got a fantastic guest, Victor Davis Hanson. He is a Martin and Lily Anderson Senior Fellow in Residence in Classics and Military History at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University, which is where we recorded this. Yeah, we were in Lou's building and we recorded it right there. He's also a professor of classics emeritus at California State University, Fresno, and a nationally syndicated columnist for the Tribune Media Services. You've seen this guy speak. You've heard him all over the place. His latest book is The Case for Trump. The big 3.5-inch book on my nightstand is about World War II because he's actually a PhD historian. He is a brilliant mind, and I brought him on the show because he takes irrational things and tries to explain them to us. This whole thing with The Case for Trump is fascinating to me because we're going to have to deal with it at some point. Notice the last few shows, we had Matt Locke, kind of conservative. We had Greg Hurwitz, kind of to the left. Both very reasonable guys. And now we got Victor Davis Hanson, the big brain doctor from Stanford, explaining some more of these things. And I'm telling you, I ask him questions that nobody else is asking him, and he gives fantastic answers. So hang in there until the very end. You guys are going to love this. This guy is brilliant. I'm not going to bug you about the standard stuff. You guys know the deal. Please support the show. If you find this valuable, let me know. I want to hear from you guys. Participate. Give me a call. Text me. At Pete A. Turner, get a hold of me. I will talk to you. And then, of course, as always, very briefly, savethebrave.org. You know what to do. Now, let's just get on to this one. Victor Davis Hanson. This is such a big deal, you guys. Victor Davis Hanson. Thank you so much.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland. This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
I'm Victor Davis Hanson, and this is Break It Down show.
Yeah, I didn't push the record button. So first off, it's exciting to be here in the Ivory Tower. We're in Lou Hoover's building at the Hoover Institute at Stanford. Victor, I love what you do and how you approach these things. Everybody should get your book, The Case for Trump, which basically you get real about the president. And we can't seem to have these conversations that I'm trying to understand. You know, the left will say, hey, no more long wars. And he turns off some long war aspects. And all of a sudden we're mad at him for it. He runs on, I'm going to work on infrastructure, and you know, these are their things. And I'll be damned. Like he said, he's going to do a lot of these things, and he's been doing them. He hasn't necessarily been successful as we thought with immigration, but the economy's booming. Whoever runs against him is going to run into what for right now is a strong economy, and he's going to be able to say, I got Apple and Amazon to bring hundreds of billions of dollars back into the nation that weren't here before. So how do we have a candid conversation about reality? Because it seems like we lose our minds and we can't accurately assess who he is.
Well, there's the left critics that are 85% of his critics are on the left, 15% are on the right. As far as the left goes, he's repealing systematically the entire Obama agenda, and they were convinced that there would be a 16-year Obama-Clinton regnum.
Right.
He didn't raise as much money as Hillary. All the polls on election night said he was going to lose, and he did the unthinkable. He won. So they were very upset. The second thing was he didn't turn out to be a liberal and conservative clothing. He was an actual conservative. They didn't believe that.
Yeah.
Even his supporters were not sure about that. And then third, it wasn't just the message of overturning the Obama agenda, but it was the messenger. There had been an assumption on the part of the left that if you made fun of George W. Bush or Mitt Romney or John McCain or George H.W. Bush, they played by the Marcus of Queensberry rules. So John McCain would say, we're not going to talk about Jeremiah Wright, 2008.
Right.
Mitt Romney said, you know what, I'm not going to go after Candy Crawley for hijacking the second presidential debate of 2012. George W. Bush said, I'm not going to descend down to the level of my critics, Cindy Sheehan, Michael Moore. Trump comes along and says, I'm basically chemotherapy, and these guys are cancer. So I'm going to make everybody sick, but I'm going to kill the media nexus with the left. And so he did. His idea is that when I get attacked, I will attack disproportionately. And people were shocked that they had so conditioned the Republican mentality not to do that. If you said that Mitt Romney tortured his dog on the roof of his car, or you said he was, pushed somebody over the cliff, Paul Ryan did, and that was on Social Security, then they took that. But Trump fires back, and that got them enraged. As far as the never Trump right.
Hey, this is P.J. Turner from the Break It Down Show, checking in real quick to ask you this. John, Scott, and I all support Save the Brave with our time, our location, our effort, and our money. Each month we give a small amount. Do the same with us. Go to savethebrave.org, click on the Donate tab, pick an amount that you want to come out each month, and they will handle all the rest. I stand behind these folks. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the show.
Trump fires back, and that got them enraged. As far as the never Trump right, all of their lifetime agendas, from conservative justices to energy development for deregulation, tax, he's enacted much more successfully at this point than Reagan did. But they were sober and judicious, Beltway, New York, Washington intellectuals. And their idea of the Republican Party was basically to be representable, to win 45% of the vote, lose the Electoral College closely, and then be rewarded maybe with an ambassadorship, do a commercial with a Democrat, and be loved. When this is all happening, over the last 25 years, this whole edifice was built on a lie. The lie was that we can go to these optional military engagements and translate tactical success to long-term strategic victory in our interest in a cost-benefit analysis. That didn't turn out to be true in Libya, Iraq, or Afghanistan. Second, the more we indulge China's cheating and theft and mercantilism, they'll interpret that magnanimity, they'll interpret that laxity as magnanimity and reciprocate in kind rather than look at it as weakness. They saw it as weakness, so they became monstrous, basically. And then the open borders, that if you can let in 1 million people, the new immigrants, if they come in illegally, who cares? And the conservatives said, we want cheap labor. The Democrats we want voters. And he said no. And then fourth, I think most Republicans and Democrats said, I'm interested in identity politics, the new demography. Republicans said, I'm interested in corporate laissez-faire economics. And between those two poles, the message was to Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa, screw you. You guys are just OxyContin cokeheads or whatever you are. You drove industry out. You're never coming back. Youngstown's a mess. Flint's a mess. It's your problem. This guy comes along who's supposed to be crude and crass and says, we can make America great. We can bring back industry. The reason industry left was not because you were on OxyContin. You're on OxyContin because industry left, not because you drove it out. Asymmetrical trade did it. We've got cheaper energy than China. We've got better workers. With fair rules, we can bring it back. Nobody thought that was possible. So he took on the entire consensus on China, foreign policy, the economy, and borders. And he got 90% of Republicans to go along with that, which was an amazing feat. And then he performed. So we had a year of 3% GDP, got unemployment down to 3.5, world's largest energy producer. So there's a lot of anger at him for all of that.
Yeah, and rejection of all of it. It's Obama's economy, all these other things. I struggle to understand how we can look at someone and make them universally prone to error. Granted, he likes to destroy his own success. This chemotherapy thing, I thought, yeah, it's a good analogy where he does things that seem to harm him. And I just don't understand that part of it. He is maddening. He frustrates the heck out of me. But I am trying to wrap my hands around what really is working. I mean, the debt is massive and it's just growing as fast as the universe is. And that's clearly not going to last. What do we do?
Well, his attitude is that the post-war order has come to an end, and it was predicated on the idea to rebuild Germany and Japan and Italy and Europe, and to defeat communism and roll back the Soviet Union. The United States could always be wealthy enough to take a hit We'll have asymmetrical trade. We'll get in the World Trade Organization. We'll subsidize NATO. We'll get engaged in Vietnam. Whatever it was.
Yeah.
We're so wealthy because after World War II, after all, Russia was destroyed, Germany was destroyed, Japan was destroyed, Europe was occupied and destroyed in some sense. The British socialized their economy after the war. We were the only one from 1945 to 1960. Then Trump comes along and said, yeah, but that's over with.
Yeah.
These people have taken advantage of us, and they're dumping product, they're stealing patents, they're stealing copyrights. Not just China, but even the Europeans. And we're not going to do it anymore. Well, there were so many people engaged, and you wanted to shake Trump and say, before you say all this, remember one thing, that there's 100 million people between Boston and Miami and between La Jolla and Berkeley, and their whole world is, ask yourself where Princeton, Stanford, Harvard, Caltech, B of A, Citibank, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, where's all this stuff located? Hollywood, it's all on the coast. And they look at themselves as citizens of the world. They deal with Asia on one side and Europe on the other. And they've never been to Bakersfield. They don't know what, Elko, Nevada is like. They don't like those people. They're has-beens. They're white working class people. And they're done with. And that was the assumption. And this guy came along and said, I'm not a racist, but you don't write off 50% of the country. And he went to those places, and he did all kinds of weird things that I'd never heard. He started saying, our farmers, hey, we got to take care of our miners, our lathe workers, our this, our that. It wasn't Romney with wingtips, in a suit that was kind of, he had a suit on, but it was authentic. He had that Queen's accent, and he went into West Virginia. Hillary went in and said, you guys all have to get new jobs and learn how to make solar panels.
Right.
He came in and said, I love big, beautiful coal. And so nobody had ever seen anybody like that, because he really changed the blue-stocking aristocratic Republican Party that was about a 45% vote getter at the national level.
Right.
And he said to Romney and the establishment, you guys have really done well at the local and state level. You picked up 1,100 offices under Obama, but you can't win at the national because you don't have a message to win the Electoral College.
Yeah.
And that's because people in Michigan don't like you, and Wisconsin don't like you, because you don't talk about workers' issues or middle-class values, or you're not authentic. And that resonated. At least he got about 3.5 million more voters to come out. The old Reagan Democrat, Perot voter, Tea Party, whatever you want to call them, deplorable, irredeemable, clinger, dregs, whatever they've been slandered as. And that overcame enormous margins that Obama had rolled up. So and this is what people forget about him. He was very sophisticated. He said, to win Pennsylvania, I got to get people to come out in Western Pennsylvania to nullify Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. To win Michigan, I got to nullify Ann Arbor and Detroit. To win Wisconsin, I got to nullify Milwaukee and Madison. And he did that systematically. Right. Columbus and Cincinnati. And the only way I can do that is have a message that excites people. And enough people came out, so he won Michigan by 10,000 votes. Wisconsin by 20, Pennsylvania by 65. Everybody said, 80,000 votes, and the election would have been different. Yeah, but the point is, what you missed is 2.5 million to 3 million people voted for him that didn't vote before, and that was enough to destroy that Obama lead. And then more terrifying to the left, he basically said Obama was an artifact. He got record minority turnout, and he got a record minority registration voting en bloc. Okay, 94% blacks, high registration. And you thought that was transferable to a 69-year-old multimillionaire white woman like Hillary? And it had to be transferable because you'd alienated the white working class. And if you don't get those margins in those cities, and I can get a counter vote, I can destroy the blue wall. And he did. And now what all of this stuff is about now, he's a racist, a white supremacist. And two things: racist, recession, racist. And that's designed, if you look at the Electoral College, to tell people in Philadelphia or Milwaukee or Detroit or Columbus, you got to come out in record numbers, because just like you did for Obama, because he's a racist. And you got to tell people in southern Michigan or western Wisconsin, you don't want to come out and vote for this guy because we're going to have a recession. He didn't help you that much. And that's because if they don't have that strategy, and then along with, we got to impeach him, he's a crook, he's crazy, 25th Amendment, emoluments clause, voting machines, Logan Act, Mueller, now it's whistleblower. Because if you don't do that, what do you have left? Your party's moved so far to the left, is the House really is AOC going to come up to Nancy and say, Nancy, we need an agenda? So,
or is she going to come after Nancy's job?
Yeah, but what would she say? She said, we've got to get behind reparations. We got to get behind infanticide. We got to get behind the New Green Deal. We got to get behind open borders. We got to get behind health care for illegals. We got to get behind confiscation gun. None of those poll 51%.
Right.
So they don't have a counter argument. There's no working class Democrat left. And so it's now, Trump is evil. We got to destroy him. And he's a racist, and he's going to destroy the economy, and he's not fit for office.
How much of that stuff is actually true? Because he is, you can look at him, and I give the guy a chance, and there's a lot of horrible things he says and does. He really behaves very poorly quite often. Mm-hmm. So, he plays into that narrative.
I think he does intentionally, because he's crass and crude, but his attitude is almost... So Joe Biden said he wants to take me behind the gym and beat me up. Joe, I would knock you out in one punch.
Yeah.
Sleepy Joe, sloppy Joe, whatever Joe.
Yeah.
And before you know it, people are saying, Trump's just being Trump. That's already baked into who he is. Biden threatened the President of the United States and said he'd like to take him behind a gym and beat him up? That's horrible for Biden to say that. It's sort of like Trump's actually been in a wrestling ring, and he's saying to everybody, you get in a tit for tat with me, we're going to be in a ring, a real ring. I've been there, you haven't. And his supporters look at that, 45% of the country, and said, I'm tired of that sober, judicious government speak. Everything is great. And I don't like those people. I don't like their background. I don't like how they sound on the media. They're lying. I just want a disruptor. I want Rodney Dangerfield to come out of Caddyshack, that old movie, and be turned loose. Yeah. Or I want Roadrunner to drive Wile E. Coyote crazy, or whatever the metaphor is. Yeah. Or I want a gunslinger like Shane to come in and kill the cattle barons and ride out. But they've had it. And so when they miss the point when they say no president has ever done this, or never Trump, or said he's lowered. Well, 45% said, yeah, that's what we wanted, because you people dressed well, you were dignified, you didn't have orange skin or yellow hair or whatever it is, but you know what? You were amoral because you wrote off the Midwest.
Yeah.
Because you had no plan to win Afghanistan, because you couldn't get 3% economic growth for 10 years, because, you invited the Chinese in to take over our economy. You signed that stupid climate accord. You did all these amoral stuff, and you dressed it up with this vocabulary and demeanor that said that you were moral. You're amoral. And we've got a guy who's chemotherapy.
Our show 2 days ago, I'm a veteran, so I do a lot of shows with veterans, and we had a guy on. His wife has to talk for him because he walked into a room in Syria and a bomb went off and made him a quadriplegic, took an eye and took his voice with him. And and this was not even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so he's in significant distress for his life all the time. And he doesn't even get steady counseling to try to decide if he to get him through the acceptance process, and maybe the reality for him is he does need to take a pill and say, this is just too much. I don't want to. But Donald Trump is not a hawk. He's not the guy who's starting the wars. He's coming in and turning them off. And he's looking at that guy and going, I don't want to write those letters anymore. As a businessman, this is not worth. I love the Kurds. I'm all about it. The Kurds are going to be there. They're going to be there 1,000 years from now. No one's going to dig them out of those mountains. But who knew he was going to be this, first off, President Obama became the big red death button pushing guy that he was, And then President Trump, I'll be damned. He said he was going to pull out of these stupid wars, and he's trying his best to do it.
We'll take the latest one.
Okay.
The Kurds.
Yeah.
So nobody has been more loyal to the United States. Everybody loves the Kurds. They're a historically oppressed people. They're defiant. They're like the Israelis or like the Greeks, the Armenians, the Poles. Mm-hmm. They suffer from unfortunate geography, but they've been pro-American. But they're not legal allies.
Right.
They're friends. So then we have a legal NATO ally, Turkey, that's not our friends, but they're our allies.
Yeah.
So yes. Trump looks at this stuff and he says, are we going to be with our friends or with our allies? They've accused me of undermining NATO because I want people to pony up what they promised. But what would undermine NATO would be to be shooting at Turks or not come to their aid when they evoke Article 5 if they get in a war with the Kurds. And they want to go in 20 miles into Syria and carve out a corridor. And they want to put 3 million refugees in there. And the Kurds, of course, don't want that buffer zone. And we've got about 150 spotters and technicians and advisors right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So get them out of the way. He didn't send them home yet. He just said, get them out of the way and stop the air cover and don't get in that fight. And people went crazy, but they didn't come up with an alternate scenario. They didn't say, okay, keep them there, and if the Turks start killing them, we're going to bomb Turkish convoys, an ally of NATO.
Right.
Or we're going to get Turkey out of NATO. Or when Kurds go across the border with a PKK, a terrorist organization that's killed 40,000 people in Turkey, we're going to help them find shelter. So they have no alternate scenario. They can't tell you how long we're going to be there. They can't tell you who exactly on whose side we are on.
They also don't know that they can't point to Kurdistan on a map.
No, they can't. And so Trump is saying it'll be Turkey, Hezbollah, Iran, Assad, the Kurds, and they're all going to be fighting each other. And the Russians are watching all this to jump in who's going to win. And why do I want to be in the middle of all this? I want to help the Kurds because they're our friends. We'll give them aid and everything, but we're not going to get in between them and the Turks.
Right.
And after the initial hysteria, and of course being Trump, he didn't explain it like that.
Right.
He said, I talked to Eric, we're just going to get out. We didn't get out yet. And he redeployed. So they're put them out of, they're in Syria, but they're in different places. So there's two ways of looking at all this. One is that he's inept, Trump, because he doesn't build bridges and he doesn't reach out and he doesn't have friends. So when you have these psychodramas like Kurdistan or tweeting that he'd like to take by Greenland or whatever it is, then he has no reservoir of goodwill. Yeah. Nobody just jumps in and defends him. In the old days, there would have been the Weekly Standard, the National Review, the Drudge Report. They all hate Trump now. On the other hand, his supporters would say, it doesn't matter, they're going to hate him anyway. And we've tried that. We've tried that with McCain, we tried that with Romney, we tried that with Bush, and they call Republicans Nazis. They do. This guy fights. He might not fight the way they like it, but he has destroyed CNN. CNN is almost at the bottom of possible ratings that can still exist. He's destroyed MSNBC.
Yeah.
He's ridiculed the New York Times. The Washington Post is a joke. NPR he's gone after. Colin Kaepernick is a complete caricature now. The NFL has lost 8% of their audience. Whatever he does, he's 360, 24/7. And he's changed things. Mm-hmm. And so that's the two. And nobody knows, as a disinterested observer, nobody can say, I know how the country feels. And it's one of two things. The country either says, I'm in a fetal position right now. I want to cover my ears and make it all go away. This Trump came on the scene. It's so messy. I'm so sick of the daily media frenzy and Trump. Just impeachment. Mueller, to go away. Or you may not like it, but if you've got a tumor, all we've got going for us is radiation and chemo, and it's going to make us sick, but it will take out this cancer. And I think about 45% on each side, and we're waiting to see what the 10% swing voter. And one day, a mom with 3 kids says, you know what, I don't want my kids to grow up in America where the president calls a country a shithole.
Right.
The next day, she goes to the park in San Francisco, and there's needles and feces. And her kid says, Mom, look. And she says, Gavin Newsom's not going to stop that. Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein are up in mansions with gates around them. They have guards with guns. Nobody cares about me. They only care about the poor and the very rich. And so that's the war for the independent suburban. It gyrates.
Yeah.
But final thing is on Trump, we keep thinking it's a popularity contest. So these stupid polls say presidential approval rating or popular. That's indicative, or they'll run an early Trump versus Warren. But all that matters is a poll around October 15th to November 6th or whatever that shows Trump versus Watt.
Right.
And baked into that is, except for the IBD and UFC and Rasmussen daily polls that were all correct, to factor in 3 or 4% bias in the way the questions, because they hate Trump.
Sure.
And when that happens, it's not Trump talks this way or doesn't that way, or Kurds or no. It's compared to what? I gave a talk not too long ago to some very wealthy donor class. I guess you'd call them that. I asked them how many, and it was a very mixed audience, how many gave money to Hillary. Quite a few in 2016, because Donald Trump's character bothered them. I said, I can understand that. How about next time? And they said, what do you mean? She's not going to run again. I said, exactly. And I don't think Biden's going to run again, because I think he's been taken out by the whole Ukraine mess. So let's say it's Elizabeth Warren.
Sure.
And I asked them that. How many will give money to Elizabeth Warren? 0.
Really?
I said, how many will give money to Donald Trump that gave money to Hillary? Half of them. So I said, let me get this straight. Half of you gave money to Hillary Clinton. All of you gave money to this group, about 18 people, in a much larger group. But half of you were going to give money to Trump, and none of you are going to give money to Elizabeth Warren. I said, yes. Tell me why. She has a wealth tax. She has a 70 to 90% income tax rate. She's going to bring in the new Green Deal. If you do that, that's going to shut down, fill in the blanks, my hedge fund. It's going to shut down my transportation company. It's going to shut down my oil company. It's going to shut down my construction company. I can't do that. We're finally getting back to where we should have been. I don't like Trump, but if it's between Trump and Warren, and I think that's going to happen. That Trump will look better if he's against Warren than, say, Biden.
Yeah. I mean, war's expensive. And yet the thing about making the wealthy the fall guy for everything, these are people that run businesses. If you tell them that we're going to charge your business 15 extra, well, heck, you've got a farm. If they came and they said, we need 15 extra % of your money, you've got to pass that on some way or go out of business.
I think I know a lot of people in business, and their attitude is, I know what happened in Obama years. He took the 36 point and he went up to 40, and then he started adding a Medicare tax and then Obamacare tax.
Right.
And then he started to go after fracking and leasing, stopping federal leasing. And a lot of people said, I got the message already. So I have this amount of capital. I'm not going to invest. I'm just going to sit tight. And what we did was we got down to about 1.3 economic growth. Even though we should have had a robust recovery from 2008, we had about 5. We had about first 3 years, we had about 8 to 12% unemployment. We got down about 5, but never down to 3.5. And what happened was all these people said, this guy won't tax me anymore. He won't regulate me as much. And he likes the idea that I make money. And I'm going to go invest.
Yeah.
So they just went crazy for the first year or two. We'll see what happens. But if they elect Warren, then people will pull back in.
Yeah.
So you know what? She doesn't like me. She resents me.
There's a lot of that on the left where I watched the last debate and I watched Kamala Harris primarily just sit there and crack jokes about the president. And I understand that's her approach. Let's belittle the president. Like, I'm too cool to care about that. But minus Andrew Yang, the rest of those people are all legislators that aren't able to. Well,
yeah, the fear for business people from Colorado or those, they all were dropped out.
Right.
And they sound kind of normal and centrist, and there was no room for them. The logic of all the people on stage at the first 3 debates, each person said to themselves, no other debater will be to the left of me. They will not sound, and I'm going to go further left than anybody. And it was kind of a mad rush over the cliff.
Yeah. So, okay. Who, if no one's going to donate to Elizabeth Warren from your small survey, who emerges? Because Joe Biden obviously has got real problems now.
I don't think he does because
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
Emerges because Joe Biden obviously has got real problems now.
I don't think he does because Elizabeth Warren is a very young 70. And Trump is probably a young 73.
Right.
Bernie Sanders is a 78, 70. And Joe Biden is an old 76.
Mm-hmm.
So he's confused. He mumbles. He confuses dates and facts and places.
Makes a reference to a record player.
He does. And then he's tried this twice before, and his campaign has imploded both times because of his plagiarism, lies about his biography, or saying things to Barack Obama like he's the first clean black person, 2008. So he doesn't have a record of ever finishing a campaign. So he's a loose cannon, and what was his recommendation were 2 things: that he was sort of a nice guy and honest, and he was not a radical lefty. But after the first debate, he decided to almost renounce everything he ever ran on. So his positions are kind of like Hillary's. And then the other thing is he can't get away from the truth. The truth is that if his son was named Hunter Jones, he wouldn't have any money.
Right.
Guy's never done anything, so he just was a parasite. His dad paved the way, and he was quid pro quoing. And what I'm getting at is he nullifies Trump's vulnerabilities. Sort of like the 2016 campaign. Trump was vulnerable on women after the Access, Hollywood, the Stormy stuff. And then who do they nominate? Hillary. And they just brought all of Bill's victims and put them in front of the debate stage.
Right.
And said, whatever I didn't rape anyone like your husband did. And that was it. So now they're going to say, look at you, Trump. You had Paul Manafort or Ivanka's jewelry line. He's just going to say, I never went over to Ukraine, and none of my children got $50,000 a month. At least my kids were business people. Yours were, Hunter didn't know anything. So he's got a real vulnerability there.
Yeah.
And he's never explained it.
What's your advice to someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who seems like, well, if her party would allow it, and who knows about that, because that's the other thing. They deal off any part of the deck they want, but, she seems like she could be reasonable.
Well, she's got a lot of advantages. She's attractive. She's young. She's well-spoken. I don't think yet she's got a reputation of being erratic and unsystematic. Mm-hmm. So I don't think she's ever sat down and said, these are 10 issues in my party. Here is late-term abortion. Here is open borders. Here's Medicare for everybody. Here's the new Green Deal. Here's reparations. Here's confiscation of some guns. Here is a wealth tax, 70, and then said to herself, what do all of them poll? What's my belief about them? And if my belief about them, is it sync with the polls or is it against the polls? And then come up with a coherent agenda.
Yeah.
So she's all over because she hasn't done that yet. And she doesn't have enough money to get advisors. And she could be very effective because they've moved so far to the left that with Biden out of the race, she could come in and say things like, I believe in climate change, but you just can't do the new Green Deal. It's going to destroy the economy for poor people. And then give a modified version. Or she could say, we can't start reparations because then we have Hispanics, we have everybody. What do you give with a white guy from Poland who came in 1950? Would you give money to a Jamaican immigrant that came last year? It's just a mess. We're not going to divide the country. She could do all that.
Yeah.
And win, I think, more of the moderates in the Democratic Party and take Biden's chunk. I don't think she's able to do that. I don't know whether she's not experienced or doesn't believe that. So she's kind of a outlier.
And what about, I mean, this whole problem, and we'll just pick on the Chinese for a second, but them stealing all this IP. I mean, they have the world's largest intelligence organization, and it steals all the time with impunity almost, except for the president has managed to knock them on their heels and force them to do some kind of negotiation. I don't see anybody looking to do that, to take it to the Chinese. Like I understand the Chinese have a big problem because they've got an exploding middle class and they have to provision those people. Otherwise, there won't be one China anymore. So they need help. They're in a very precarious situation, but who's going to take them to task if it's not him? And if I don't understand.
Well, before Trump, the Chinese were very brilliant because they put 1 million people in Muslims in re-education camps. They annexed Tibet. They exploit the Uyghurs. They execute people for all sorts of stuff. They're pressing it. But they thought, the left should be angry at us. But they have a third of 1 million students here, and they play the minority identity politics. If you criticize us, you're racist.
Right.
We have been exploited, European colonialism and the Opium War, whatever it is. And so the left has been very quiet. The right knows what China's like. They steal patents, copyrights, manipulate the currency, technological appropriate, a whole bit. But they're making money because they have cheap labor and they have a big market. So the NBA has 800 million viewers.
Yeah.
Nike shoes got a lot of stuff. So they let it go. Then Trump comes along and says China's cheating. They are. And China's racist and it oppresses its minorities, and he starts attacking. And then all of a sudden, Xi says he's going to be president for life. Then all of a sudden, we start to see the real side of China as they clamp down. All of a sudden, we hear little rumblings from the Japanese and the South Koreans and the Taiwanese that this is pretty good, that Trump's doing this. And suddenly, it's like that commercial when you throw the hammer through the Apple commercial in the 1980s. Suddenly, all the left goes, well, I'll never mention the name Trump, but I'm going to start criticizing China for human rights, or for forced sterilizations, or for minority oppression, or for religious discrimination. And all of a sudden the right is saying, they make me give all my trade secrets when I go over there. I'm going to move to Vietnam. I'm going to move to Thailand. I'm going to move to Indonesia. I'm going to move my factory to... And it was like this mirage was just dissipated because Trump came in and just like, it was a taboo. Everybody said China's got 1.4 billion people. They're fated to rule the world. Their economy is growing faster than ours. Their military, their economics, their culture is going to it was a parlor game. By 2050, by 2070, to 2060, 2040, whatever the magic date was, they're going to overtake us. Trump comes in and says, that's only because you let them do it. You're weak. One American citizen right now creates twice the goods and services as 3 Chinese counterparts. They have 1.4 million, we have 330 million. Their GDP is about 12, ours is about 22 trillion. They have 400 million that have never been to a Western doctor. They have an ecological crisis like you won't believe. They're not strong, they're a paper tiger. Nobody had ever heard that before. Mm-hmm. And so it empowered people to come out of the woodwork. And so that's one issue that I think is the most important achievement that he's going to have.
One of the things that's brought up a lot, obviously, the sensational things, I don't want to even get into that, but about the race thing and this perception that we have a race problem in America. I've been abroad. I've seen, what people do to each other, whether it's race or religion or tribe or whatever, right? So it seems to me that we've got an extraordinarily diverse, self-selected, diverse country where we have the second biggest population of Colombians, other than Colombia. All these different people come here for this opportunity. And yeah, of course, I went to the South, went to Alabama, and I wanted to go to the Jefferson Davis Museum because I want to understand. It's uncomfortable, and that's where I'm going to learn. And I saw them cutting a birthday cake for Jefferson Davis, and I'm like, I just can't do it. I don't know how to do that. So there is racism here, but it seems like let me just change the context of this real quick. From my time in combat zones, out talking to people day-to-day basis, the specter is always way worse than the problem. So the specter of terrorism or whatever it's going to be, that was more crippling than the actual act.
Yeah.
Is that where we're at with racism, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, pre-Obama, we were making enormous progress because for a variety of reasons. One is assimilation and intermarriage and integration was an all-time high. So 30% of the country had no particular tribal affinity. And there was a sense that the economy under Clinton and Bush had been moving. So Obama comes in, says he's got no red state, no blue state, and then he starts saying things like, get in your face, take a gun to a knife fight, punish your enemies. Michelle started saying, raise the bar on me, downright cruel. There was indications that he was going to, Eric Holder, my people, all this stuff started. And Black Lives Matter took off. So what happened was with Obama, people felt that Obama was a transitional figure and that he was backed up by demography. He had won. And now the white vote was going to shrink forever. And what they didn't realize was that, America has a melting pot. So if I had said you're an Italian American in 1920, you'd be a Democrat. If you're Giuliani or Cuomo, I can't tell you. And so if I say your name is Lopez, you're probably going to vote for Hillary or Obama. But it doesn't mean in 20 years it'll be true.
Right.
Just like an Italian American. So my point is that we're making progress, and then the Democrats decided that they were going to go down the identity politics and appeal to people's race or their superficial appearance as essential rather than incidental to their character. They opened the borders. They flipped California, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, largely on the basis of the children of 20 million illegal aliens. Okay, fine. And that polarized everybody. Trump comes along, and they hate him, of course. But his attitude is, I don't want to talk about race. I want to get the economy going at 3% a year. It hasn't done that in a decade. I want to get unemployment down to 3.5%. Implicit in that message is, if you're an inner city black kid, or you're a Mexican kid in Fresno County, for the first time in your life, somebody needs your labor. They're so short. You close the border down and you cut back on visas. All these grandees that always bring in cheap labor, or they don't, they just write you off, or you're a meth head in Iowa or whatever. We need you now.
Yeah.
when I go to very impoverished countries,
Right.
cities, counties, excuse me, what do I see? I see people as waiters, as tilers, as sheetrockers. You can tell they've never been in the workforce. They have the teardrop tattoo. They have the 13. They're gangbangers.
Yeah.
And yet they're working. And you get to the point where when you get down to 3.5 unemployment, there are people, you don't have very many people, and the labor participation rate is going up. So what I'm getting at is then race is incidental because people feel dignity. I had a good friend I went in high school with, and I said, "Are you still cutting lawns?" He said, "No, I'm not cutting lawns." I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Victor, I have guys working for me as roofers." I said, "Yeah, you do?" "Yeah, I'm a contractor now." I said, "Well, are you in demand?" He said, "Oh, my demand? My biggest problem is people hire my roofers right off the roof. They'll come up and say, we'll pay you $22, not $20.
All right.
And I said, "Well, what does that do?" He said, "Everybody wants to be a roofer. Everybody's working." And that's a very different reality as an approach to race. I'm not saying that it's the solution, but what Trump is trying to say is we're all Americans and we're going to make this economy boom so much, and we're going to have so much emphasis on Americans, not Europeans, not a bunch of white Germans or Asian Chinese or black Kenyans, just our guys, that we're going to boom this economy. And for the first time, somebody's going to have to come to you. Maybe it's a white guy will knock on your door and say, "I need you." And it's amazing. If you get away from Washington, New York, and go out in the heartland. I was just in southern Michigan last week. Everywhere I saw, now hiring, help wanted.
Yeah.
And that is why the left can't make sense of these crazy statistics that whereas Trump got 8% of the black vote, sort of like Romney and McCain, suddenly you see polls that it's 20, 25. Or he got 33% of the Hispanic vote, same as Romney, suddenly you see 45. And that's why...
He's going to literally be able to say, is your life better today than it was 4 years
and
ago?
why is it? He's going to say, why is it? It's because I'm a racist? Why did I craft an economic policy that helps you who are black or brown or not white? And what did Obama do for you rather than just talk? So that's why you hear the Democrats say recession, 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 and racism, racism, racism. They want to say to people, we're going to have a recession, or that they're racist, because it doesn't take much, according to the Electoral College, if the Democrats are so far left and they're so anti-white working class that all you need, if you're Trump, is 40% of the Hispanic vote or 15% of the black vote, and they can't win. Yeah. And they know that.
It's hard to gather votes, too, and you call people racist and evil and Nazi and everything. I have one quick question I want to sneak in real fast, and definitely short answer is good. Second terms typically don't go well.
What's that?
Second terms for presidents typically don't. Yeah. So what are your thoughts then?
Well, see, he has to get elected first.
For sure.
If he were to be elected, he has one big problem, and that is we're borrowing $1 trillion a year, and he walked in with $19 trillion debt, and it's up to $22 trillion, $21 trillion. So he's going to have to address that. And if he addresses that, you're going to have an economic slowdown. If you have an economic slowdown, there's only 2 or 3 ways to prime the economy back. It's lower interest rates, where they're already non-existent almost, or it's to borrow more money, but we borrow $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Or it's to spend a lot of government money, but we're in hock. So he's either going to have to cut entitlements or raise taxes, or both. And when he does that, it's choke time.
Yeah.
Because and he's going to have to do it unless he's going to play the Bush-Obama game of doubling the debt and handing it off the next person. So it didn't happen on my watch. It's musical chairs.
By the way, North Korea is still a hornet's nest. See you later, Bob. Yeah. Anyhow, great, fantastic, exactly what I was hoping. It's just some real talk and real conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.